Yasodanandana Braja Anurangana Yasodanandana Braja Anurangana Yamuna Chira Chani Yamuna Chira Anachani Dayananda Madhya Punjabi Hani Dayananda Madhya Punjabi Hani Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Anurangana Sodanandana Braja Anurangana Yamuna Chira Vanachari Yamuna Chira Vanachari Yasodanandana Braja Yasodanandana Braja Janurangana Yamuna Chira Vanachari Yamuna Chira Vanachari Jaya Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Santaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. On the windowsill. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Madhya Leela, chapter 9, text 196 and 197. So I'll just recite 196 on my own, then we can all recite together for 97. Prabhuravachane vipra rahaila Vishvasa Bhojana Karila Haila Jivanera Asha. Translation. Although the Brahman was fasting, he had faith in the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and accepted food. In this way, his life was saved. 197. Tanre avashiya prabhu karila gamana. Tanre avashiya prabhu karila gamana. Kritamalaya snana kari aila duvashana. Kritamalaya snana kari aila durvashana. Tanre ashvashiya prabhu karila gamana. Kritamalaya snana kari aila durvashana. Tanre ashvashiya prabhu karila gamana. Kritamalaya snana kari aila durvashana. Tanre ashvashiya prabhu karila gamana. Kritamalaya snana kari aila durvashana.
Tanre ashavashiya prabhu karila gamana. Kritamalaya snana kari aile durvashana. Tanre asvasiya prabhu karila gamana.
Mataji's. Tanre Ashvashiya, assuring him, Prabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Karila Gamana, departed, Kritamalaya, in the river known as Kritamalaya. Snanakari, bathing. Aila came. Durvashana. Durvashana. Translation. After thus assuring the Brahman, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeded further into southern India and finally arrived at Durvasana, where he bathed in the river Caritamrta. In response, please. After thus assuring the Brahman, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeded further into southern India and finally arrived at Durvasana, where he bathed in the river Caritamrta. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki. Presently the Caritamrta river is known as the Bhagai or Vaigai. This river has three tributaries named Suruli, Varaha, Nadi and Patila Gundu. The river Caritamrta is also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.39 by the sage Karabhajan. Om Gantamirandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastachadi Sitarine. So this is a short purport. So I'll just speak a little bit about what led up to this particular situation. So, Lord Chaitanya is travelling through South India, and he would go to one house, take some prasadam there, then enlighten the householders, and then move on, always chanting the holy name. In this way, he inundated the whole of South India with the Sankirtan movement. So in this particular case, one Brahman, he looked very unhappy, and he wasn't taking prasadam after Lord Chaitanya took. And so Lord Chaitanya asked him, why are you feeling so sad? And he spoke about how Mother Sita was touched by the hand of Ravan. And this pains me very much, is how can Ravan touch Mother Sita, who's the goddess of the universe? And so Lord Chaitanya began to speak. He said that actually Mother Sita is transcendental. You cannot be touched by the hand of a materialistic person. So when Lord Chaitanya explained this, the Brahman became very enlivened, and his misunderstanding was actually corrected. So this is the process of devotional service, is that, we hear from authorities, and this is the descending process. And when we hear from proper authorities, there's nothing can actually prevent us understanding the process. And in the inexorable instruction, it's explained that if we try to understand things by the ascending process, then we have so many obstacles. Anybody name any obstacles by ascending? There's 4 mentioned, actually. Imperfect senses, we illusion, mistakes, and we cheat. So basically, a hearing process from authority is recommended. And this is true in all life. Even in material world, we may learn so many things, but we need the personal guidance of somebody who's practiced. In this way, we can actually understand things properly. Bhagavad Gita even says that, jnana is one thing, but vijnana is actually real knowledge. Because real knowledge means that we actually understand it as a fact. It's not just theoretical. Well, if it remains in the theoretical realm, then it's unsteady. But when it's practiced, then it becomes understood. So this is explained in the Mahabharata, one nice verse. Tarko pratishta srutaya vibhina nasavrishya yasha matam nabinam. What's the rest of it? Dharma shitatvam nihitam guhayam mahajana yena gata sapanta. So the main point here is Mahajana yena gata sapanta. That we hear from the Mahajans. There were 12 Mahajans. What's those Mahajans? Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu, Komara, Kapilo, Manu, Prahlada, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Vaishaki, Vayam. So this seems like a little bit of a contradiction, is it? I'll tell a story. Prabhupada was once, it was a moon landing, 1969. And he had one servant with him he was American, so he was interested in the moon landing. He wasn't completely purified from his, from his designation. So he still had some aparties. And he wasn't actually practicing so seriously, so that exacerbated the problem. And Prabhupada was making light of it. He was trying to joke with him every time he was mentioning the moon landing. But it only wound him up. And on the day when they were going to land, he bought a television and he invited Prabhupada to watch the landing. But Prabhupada, he took a massage and he was looking the other way and he was dictating. He said, "Now they've landed, Prabhupada." He says, "Oh, very good." He says, and he says, any people there? Are there any clouds, He said, no, Prabhupada. He says, "Are there any cities?" And Prabhupada said, "No, it's the moon, Prabhupada." He says, "They have not landed on the moon." And so that was the final straw, actually. And not long after that, he just left the movement. And later, Prabhupada was speaking to his senior men, and he said, "I can understand that he left, that he didn't believe me, but how could he not believe Shastra?" So, Mahajana yena gata sapanta. So, the Shastras say, follow the Mahajan, or, this particular instance, follow Shastra. Tarka Pratisha. If we just to actually say why it's the Mahajan first, we qualify why we hear from the Mahajan. This verse is saying, Tarko Apratishta, that, dry knowledge is not actually stable. It's based on the senses, like we say. We haven't got the ability to understand transcendental knowledge through imperfect senses. Shrutaya vibhina, the Shastras are many-branched. I think it's a verse in the Chaitanya Caritamrta, maybe one of you know it, that says that we shouldn't learn too many of it. We shouldn't read too many Shastras, otherwise we'll become confused. Of course, this doesn't mean our Shastras. It means there are so many Shastras. The work's been done. Lord Chaitanya told the Goswamis to, cultivate or read all the Shastras and find the essence, which they did. So therefore, He Kali Kali Ara Nahir Konadam Vaishnav Shastra E Shastramam. So, in other words, in this age of Kali, there are no religious principles. Only the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnav Shastras. It's another one for the Mahajans, right? Or one each, Vaishnavas and Vaishnav Shastras. Then the next one, it says that Rishya, Nasav Rishya Yasha Matam Nabinam. That, the sages, they all have a different opinion. Has anybody come across that? General de Gaulle, anybody remember General de Gaulle? showing your age now. So generally Gaudi says, in France there are 2,000 cheeses. So what did he mean by that? He meant that, everybody's got their own opinion. He says, how can you rule a country like this? And so in this world, everybody's got their own opinion. And even the sages, they have to differ from one another in order to be a sage, to be somebody who's recognised. So it's not possible to understand the truth through that process. So there it says, Dharma Tam Guhayam Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta. That the real truth about religious principles are in the heart of a self-realised soul. So remember we were saying in Bhagavad Gita, it's not Gyan. Until we understand Shastra, it's just Gyan, it's just unrealised. But when we actually practice and realise, then it becomes Vigyan. So we need to hear from... So in other words, we need to know who's a Mahajan by reading Shastra. And then we need to know what Shastra means through listening to a Mahajan. Somebody who's realised it and puts it into practice. So this doesn't mean, we've got a Mahajan in our disciplic succession. There's 4 disciplic successions, right? And 3 of them are Mahajans. There's Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the Kumaras. And the other one is Lakshmi. So, she's the eternal consort of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But 3 Mahajans, so like Brahma, he's Tene Brahma Hridaya Avrikavaye. He was instructed through the heart. So when one is pure, one can actually understand the teachings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the situation of Mahajan. He's reached the highest stage of devotional service, and therefore the Lord can dictate through the heart as well as his own realization. Just like how he dictates through the heart, in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam there was Maharaj Agnidra, and due to his father was Priyavrata, and at the time of conception, Priyavrata became a little bit lusty. And so, the son which was born at that conception was Maharaj Agnidra, who was a Kshatriya. But he was a little bit materially motivated, contaminated. And he desired a wife. Obviously, as a king, he has to carry on the dynasty. And he says that Lord Brahma sent the perfect wife. The perfect wife, Purvachiti, I think it was. Because how did he know to send a wife? How did he even know to send a wife? What to speak of the perfect wife? Because he could see into the heart of Maharaj Agnidra. So this is the position of a self-realised soul. And this is why we are safe when we're in the association of devotees. Is every devotee a Mahajan? Put your hands up. All the Mahajan. Don't be shy. So, I don't think, maybe not. So therefore, Shastra, Chaitanya Charitamrta says something else. It says, Siddhanta Balya Chitina Karya Alas Iha Haite Krishna Lagi Sudritamanas. Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya said, we should not neglect to discuss threadbare the conclusions of the Shastra, especially on controversial points. He says, these things are not controversial, but they actually strengthen the mind. We become fixed in the proper understanding. And when we become fixed in the proper understanding, we become attached to Krishna. So this is the process. Even though we're in a disciplic succession, it's a long way between Lord Brahma and us, is that right? And a lot of things have happened. There's been a lot of changes. Even in my lifetime, the language has changed. There's so many things that, 40, 50 years ago, you just didn't say those things. And if you did say them, they meant something else, like cool. What did cool, 30, 40 years ago, cool meant, it's a bit, but it doesn't mean that anymore, does it? It's got two meanings. Any more? What's that? Thick? Sick? Sick? What does that mean, anyway? Yeah, so things are changing. And so the information, the presentation changes. And so this is why this verse, Siddhanta Balichitina Karya Alas, is needed. And the process the reason that the disciplic succession maintains is because it's a process of discussing this knowledge. It's not a matter of, there's three processes described in Bhagavad Gita of discussing this knowledge. What's that? There's jalpa, which means that somehow or other I have to prove my point above his. That's jalpa. We're not interested in what is the truth, but we have to. And the other one is that whatever is called vitanda, is whatever argument this person comes up with, I'm going to smash. I don't have an argument myself, but I'm going to defeat his argument. Does anybody recognise those those traits? But the last one is called, what is it called? It's called a bard. Bard means, according to proper logic and according to a civil debate, then one discusses a thing according to the criteria. And samvad means that we discuss Shastra. Shastra should be discussed. So first thing before we can understand Shastra is we have to become qualified to even speak about it. This is why the Brahmins were the only ones allowed to read Shastra, because they were relatively pure, and therefore they could discuss without getting into Vitanda and Jalpa. And so before we discuss Shastra, we have to actually understand our consciousness. We have to get a mirror, the mirror of the what's my purpose in this discussion? And then we can go forward. The purpose in the discussion should be open and trying to understand. And in bygone ages, we read in Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta how when somebody was defeated, many times they'd accept the other person as their guru. They were so serious. And so when we discuss, we have to be serious. So there's a little bit about Lord Chaitanya when he instructed this Brahman. This culture was there. Modern day term for it is what? Anybody know the modern day term? Starts with H. Hermeneutics. There's a whole course a couple of years ago on hermeneutics. And it's quite intense, there's so many things. But anyway, okay, so 15:15 talks about Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivisto Mata Smriti Jnanamohopahanam Cha Vedista Sarveham Eva Vidyo Vedanta Krid Vedavid Eva Chaham. So Krishna's in the heart, and ultimately, to understand the absolute truth, we have to take shelter of Krishna. There was one conversation, does Krishna give us some free will? Are you sure? Anyway, I'll leave you with something to think about. I was reading one conversation and about Prabhupada, and I forget who started, but there were 3 or 4 of his senior disciples here. Some were sannyasis, and let's just try and remember the thread of the conversation. One devotee said, is that, Prabhupada, how have we come to Krishna consciousness? it seems that, so many people out there are not taking it, but, we're taking it. Is it by chance? Prabhupada said, no, nothing's by chance. And so then when Prabhupada said, so Dayananda Maharaj said, so, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme. Prabhupada said, yes, that's right. And so then another Panchatravidya Maharaj said, anyway, I forget exactly how it goes, but one said that, so that means that if everything moves by the will of Supreme, we don't have any free will. He says that, because Prabhupada started talking about Agyata Sukriti. Agyata Sukriti means unknown devotional service. And this point was being debated that if we don't know what we're doing and we render some devotional service to a Vaishnava, we get benefited. He says, so that rendering of service, it's actually by chance. And Prabhupada said, no, it's not by chance. He says, well, what is it? And he says, Krishna's in the heart. He says, so Krishna's directing that person to render some Agyata Sukriti. He says, so... he says, so then it's actually... there is no free will, Krishna's directing. And so Prabhupada says, if we don't see that Krishna's in the equation, that he's actually sanctioning everything, it's a philosophy of karma mimamsa. It means as we perform some activity, there has to be a certain result. He said, no, every time there's a result, Krishna sanctions it. That's the bottom line. There's so many philosophies we hear, that bhakti is in the heart of the devotee, and because he's got bhakti, he can give bhakti. But at the end of the day, it's up to Krishna. So, there's interim understanding and there's ultimate understanding. So a devotee's understanding is that, Krishna's in charge of everything, and that, we're all instruments. We're given a little bit of freedom to serve Krishna in a certain way, that's all. And that's even sanctioned by Krishna. Does anybody feel satisfied with that? Who feels satisfied? Put your hands up. Who's a little bit dissatisfied? Who understands the question? Only half of you put your hands up there. Yes, so Krishna is the... So in the association of devotees, it says we should take association of pure devotees or pure in motive. Satam prasangam mama viri samvido. Bhajanti ritkana rasayanakata. Tajoshina apapavarga varmari. Shradaratir bhakti anukramishati. He said in the association of pure devotees, then topics about the Supreme Lord are satisfying to the ear and pleasing to the heart. And by hearing these activities, we become advanced on the path of devotional service. And then we can actually spontaneously render service as the heart becomes purified. There's another point here. About rivers. I mean, I don't know that much about rivers. But I'll do my best. It says, Yashyatma buddhi kunupe sritaduki, svadi kalatarishu eyabomidi, yadtetha buddhi shalilena karichit, gyaneshu abhagyeshu saeva gochara. So in this verse, it's talking about disqualifications and qualification for becoming a cow or an ass. And one of the qualifications is that we bathe in rivers. So, we go to a sacred place and we bathe in the river and that's all we do. It says, no, we should inquire from the sadhus who are living at that holy dam. So this is like a little bit of a... Is it an aparad towards the Ganges and the Yamuna? It is. Because it's actually not stating those rivers. it's stating the lesser rivers. If we just go and bathe in a lesser river, then, and that's all we do, then we're considered ignorant, like a cow or an ass. And if we go and bathe in the Ganges or the Yamuna, it's different. There are 5 main rivers. What's the other ones? Kavi and 2 others, I can't remember. Narmada. Godavari, is it? But it says, there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Morganti yatte mukha padma dadais chindan chasarve, I can't remember. Yashanga marshada shurit saraya padam padam tirtha suryapada. What is it? You know it. Padam padam tirtha surit pradaya. He says, devotees of the Lord take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Some of them take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Some of them take shelter by hearing. And by hearing, one's carried by the wings of the Vedas. The Vedas transport us to transcendental knowledge. And one can render devotional service. So this is one for the Vedas again. And we're talking about the rivers now, the difference between the rivers and the Vedas. So in this verse it's saying that some people, at every step, they take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord by bathing in the holy rivers like the Ganges. So both are the same, actually. Prabhupada says at the end of this purport, he says if we take a little bit of Ganges water every day and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, then we'll make rapid progress in devotional service. And actually, putting the, anyway. So, so we've talked about hearing from the Mahajans, hearing from Shastra, bathing in rivers compared to hearing Shastra. But in our situation, there's not many holy rivers in the UK, I don't think. Is there any holy rivers? Does anybody know of any? I think the nearest is the Jordan, isn't it, in Israel. The Jordan's supposed to be a holy river. So therefore we take shelter of Shastra. And when we go, has anybody felt any relief by bathing in the Ganges or the Yamuna? And felt a difference? What was that difference? I remember I was once, it was Ekadashi in Mayapur. And on Ekadashi sometimes you get a real headache, don't you? And I thought, I just want to lay down. They said, no, we're going to the Ganges to take baths. I thought, I'll go and I'll stand there, but I'm not going in. And they all went in and I was like suffering away. I thought, go on, I'll go in. And I went in, I just went to the side for about 30 seconds and put my head under the water. And I came out, and it had gone, completely gone. And I had so much energy. I thought, it works. Of course, water is refreshing anyway, but, it doesn't usually react like that. So, yeah, we go in the Ganges, we bathe as often as possible. And if we get a chance to go to Radhakund, we should bathe there also, with great awe and reverence. So yeah, our process is Shravanam Kirtanam. Just like this Brahmin heard from Lord Chaitanya, we may not have the facility of the rivers, but we can take shelter of the Shastra. And Agyata Sukriti is the beginning, where, Shushushro Shradhadanasya, Vasudeva Gataruchi. Vasudeva Gataruchi, we get that taste for hearing Shastra by serving the Mahat. Vasudeva Kata Rushi Shanmahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Shravana Kirtana. This is the supreme service. And by that service, this is what we're doing on Sankirtan. We're engaging people. We're actually getting their favour even though they don't take books. They're hearing the holy name. They're seeing a devotee dressed in dhoti and kurta. They're taking prasadam. They're getting a Gyata Sukriti. And then by that Gyata Sukriti, Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna. Punya Shravana Kirtana. Ridhanta Stohe Bhadrane Vidonoti Saritsatam. Then we become serious about hearing, and Krishna within the heart does the rest. I was listening to a tape by Prabhupada the other day. He says, all we have to do is hear. If we've got envy in the heart, he says, just keep hearing. Of course, we make an effort, but we just keep hearing. This is it's such a simple process. We just have to do it. And not become, disappointed if things don't work the way we want them to. We're used to being controllers. We think we're controllers of our destiny. Even devotees, we carry that, what they call it, samskara in the heart. But Prabhupada's just telling us to keep hearing. Keep hearing the Maha Mantra, keep hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and keep associating with devotees. If we keep doing that, then, we'll actually make rapid progress in devotional service and come to the point of feeling, spontaneous, more and more spontaneous. That's what we want, spontaneous devotional service where we're just attracted to performing these activities. And then, we're so much on the safe side. So Prabhupada says actually. So Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati. Nice. What's the biggest problem what's the biggest obstacle in our spiritual life? Offences. Offences are a big obstacle. There's two obstacles. One is offences, and one is the mind, yeah. It's us, isn't it? No, the other thing is attachment to sense gratification. It says if the hearing process, it says that the biggest attachment is the attraction between male and female. That's described by in the 5th canto. It's a basic principle of material existence. Does anybody know that verse? Janasya mahoham aham mameti. So this attraction, by hearing process, Prabhupada explains in the purport that even great sages have practiced spiritual life, transcendental life for many, many years, many, many lifetimes. At the last hurdle, they get caught out. Indra sends an apsara, and they're in meditation, and they hear the ankle bells, and they open their eyes, and they're finished. He says, but, if we keep hearing this philosophy, we'll be protected. We won't be attracted by, just like Haridas Thakur was. And so this is the beauty of this process. It's a mad world. Has anybody seen the situation? We're distributing books it's lunacy, really. We're going out there distributing books in the worst possible conditions. There's no goodness anymore. It's all ignorance and passion. And it's all around us, but somehow or other, if we're absorbed in the activity, we're not affected. So that's special mercy. Other sampradayas, they can't understand that. They can't understand that, how we can go to the Western world and mix freely with Westerners and not be affected. So this is special mercy, Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And Lord Chaitanya said that, what's that verse? Mahaprabhu Bhakta Ganera Vairagya Pradan Yahandaki Prityana Gora Bhagavan. He says, when Lord Chaitanya sees this renunciation, he says renunciation is the basic principle which sustains our devotional service. And ultimately that's been sustained by Lord Chaitanya. He says when Lord Chaitanya sees this endeavour, he says he becomes very satisfied. So this endeavour to, serve Lord Chaitanya in these difficult situations is real renunciation, and we're protected by the Supreme Lord because he's satisfied with our determination. And then, of course, anything else about this Caritamrta river? I was going to talk about this process of devotional service a little bit more, actually. And what's the next verse that follows Nasta Prayeshu? Tamod, yeah. That the lower modes of nature are cleansed away. One becomes situated in goodness. Goodness means we feel peaceful and we can practice devotional service nicely now. And then by practicing devotional service in the mode of goodness, the mode of pure goodness starts to prevail. Krishna becomes situated in the heart. And then evam prasanna manasa. Prasanna means we become enlivened in devotional service. Evam prasanna manasa bhagavat bhakti yogata. Bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangha shajayate. We become liberated. We become firmly fixed in devotional service. Iha yasha hare dasya. Even while we're in this particular body. And then this vidyate, this knot is in the heart. Hridaya grantis, this knot is cut. And then one sees the self as master. Yes. Is that right? I think they've changed it now to one sees oneself and his master, is it? Anyway, both are correct. When we actually see the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and our relationship with him, by actually serving in that relationship, we're actually master of the material energy. It doesn't affect us anymore. There's one verse in Bhagavad Gita, Indriyani paranyahur, Indriyabhya paramamanaha, manasasto yobadir paratastusa. And there it says that the sense objects are superior to the senses. Is that right? Hands up who agree. The sense objects are superior to the senses.
No.
Yeah.
The senses are superior to the matter.
The senses, yeah. The mind superior to the senses.
The mind is superior to the senses, intelligence superior to the mind, the soul superior to
But then Prabhupada in that purport, he quotes one verse which twists it round. And he says the sense objects, I forget which way it is, superior to, the senses are superior to the objects. But in the verse he quotes that the sense objects are superior to the senses. So that's our position. In material life, the sense objects are actually attracting us because we're absorbed in them. We're absorbed in the modes of nature. But when we're actually absorbed in our real nature in service to Krishna, then, we're absorbed in a proper way, then the material energy doesn't affect us. Daivihi yashagunamayi, mama maya duratyaya. So, hearing and service. And we progress on the path of devotional service. So I just want to say a few more other things. We finish about quarter, they usually say, on Saturday. So I'll leave a little bit of time if anybody wants to discuss. But I just wrote down one or two points about these rivers, about this particular. This Ketumala River, it's this is the river where King Satyavrata was bathing. King Satyavrata. he was bathing in the river, and he was, you get some river, and you offer it to the river, like Advaita, you offer the Ganges to the Ganges. So he got some of the Caritamrta river, and he offered it to. When he went like that, there was a fish in his hand. And look at that. And so he thought, that's unusual. I'll put it in a bowl. And he put, I think everybody knows the story. He put it in a little pot of water. And then when he looked round, the fish was as big as the pot. And so he thought, I better put it in the lake. So he took it out of the pot and he put it in the lake. And then when he looked back, it was as big as the lake. And then he decided to put it, I don't know how he got it to the sea actually, but anyway, then he put it in the sea. And when he looked around, it covered the whole ocean. And he thought, this must be the Supreme Lord. At some point, we see in an activity, it becomes so obvious that Krishna is actually in the equation. And so King Satyavata realized that. And so then, he prayed to the Supreme Lord, and he told him about the inundation which would come, that he should collect his relatives and everything together, and at some point there'd be an inundation of water, and he would come and save the situation. And this King Satyavrata, he became, in his next birth, Vayavasvata Manu. So this is a particular pastime which took place in this river. So also he mentions, in that particular purport we've just read, it mentions Bhagavatam 11.5.39. And in that, so I read that particular purport, and it speaks about the South India, where this river is. And it starts talking about devotional service, not about the river. And it says, in this place in South India, it's in Tamil Nadu, I think, he says many devotees will be made. There will be many devotees. And another place in the Chaitanya Charitamrta, I think it says that the Krishna consciousness movement will be spread from South India. So a very special place. And many devotees now in England from South India, Gujarat, like that. And it's becoming more obvious like that. I mean, it's very difficult to make Western devotees. They may take some interest for some time, but a lot of the time they don't maintain. But it seems very natural for, Indian devotees to take up the process. At least externally, we come to the temple. Not everybody's following, of course. But still, there are more. So we have to see what the barometer is telling us and how to go forward with this movement, where to put our energy. Bharata Bhumiti Hoila Manusha Janma Ja Janma Sakati Kara Kara Upaka. Those who take the birth in the land of India should make their life perfect and then work for the benefit of others. Well, that doesn't mean to say if we're not born in India, we don't do the same thing. You know what I mean? Let them do it. Yeah, so actually there's another pastime. It says the Ganges is actually the Kritamala. The Ganges, I can't remember the story, but it said that everybody who takes bath in this Kritamala river should be purified. And so, the Supreme Lord said, Tatasu, so be it. Then the Ganges entered to make sure. So, according to that pastime, we're actually bathing in the Ganges as well. Okay, so this is a little bit of information. So we'll stop there. Has anybody got any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mahaj. In today's class, you quoted so many verses. So my question is, how come even at this age you remember so many verses?
How come what?
Even at this age you remember so many verses.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I read them up before I came in here.
No, but as the class was going on, you quoted so many words from CC, Shuddhavatam, etc., right? So what's the trick? That's the thing.
Well, I think it's good for everybody to learn verses. It really fixes in the philosophy. It's no longer a doubt in the mind when we learn a verse and we think about a subject and we remember that verse, then it becomes clear. And it clears away any doubt that may be there. And we're able to expand on it. So it's worth the effort. And when we learn a verse, we feel purified. It's not just writing, it's actually Shastra, it's like the Maha Mantra. And when we speak to people, they can understand that this is not just, his own words. It's just like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, it starts talking about, the descendant of so-and-so was so-and-so. So many dynasties all the way through. Why? In the Bible it says, there's actually so many dynasties all the way through. So-and-so begot, so-and-so begot, so-and-so begot. It's actually, it's something substantial. You can't make up things like that, So Shastra, so when we learn shlokas, it acts in the same way. It's something solid. Okay. Somebody else?
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, thank you for your class. I'm seeking some clarification on something that you said, then I've got a follow-up question, if that's okay. Did you say that we need both the Mahajan and the Shastra to understand the Shastra? We just can't have the Shastra on its own.
You can try, but, Prabhupada said we cannot make advancement without association. And association is especially for hearing. So it's one of the 5 main processes to associate. And the other one is to read Srimad Bhagavatam. So we simultaneously do our own studying and then hear. And then we know what we're hearing is actually coming from the right source. But then we get realization on that. The Mahajans are able to actually present the philosopher, time, place and circumstance. We'll be misled if we just read Shastra.
Okay, thank you. And does that mean that Srila Prabhupada's books are different because we've got the Shastra there and Prabhupada's purport? So does that mean that if you give someone Prabhupada's books, you're giving them the Mahajan and the Shastra and that's all okay? Or is there still something more that is required after that?
Yeah, we almost have had the experience when we've even read Prabhupada's purports and we've not fully understood them. And we approach a devotee and he can actually, because he has practical experience of devotional service, he can put it into practical terms for our understanding. Just like, I've said this many times, there's one verse which says that a moment's association with a pure devotee can give one complete success. A moment is the 7th of the second. It's not much, is it? What can you get in the 7th of a second? Complete success, according to Shastra. So, but then, one devotee was asked Prabhupada, one devotee was actually asking everybody about this, and it got really, frustrated that nobody could answer. Because he was thinking in terms of time. And so one devotee, and then, I was a little bit thoughtful about it. I thought, he's got a point, But then I inadvertently listened to Prabhupada on a tape, and he said, and somebody asked the same question. And so, immediately I was interested. And he said, how can we make advancement by associating with a devotee in the 11th of a second? And Prabhupada said, it's like this. There's wet grass and dry grass. If you try to set fire to wet grass, you may never do it, or it'll take a long time. He says, if you try to ignite dry grass, poof. So Prabhupada explained it in a completely different way, that you can immediately take up devotional service if you're serious. So who would have thought that way? You'd have been carrying on thinking about time ongoing. You wouldn't have actually been able to actually understand it that way without practical guidance.
Just
Yeah.
a follow-up, if that's all right. So like, if we go on Sankirtan, there's like two kind of arguments. Someone might say, oh, the book is enough. Give them the book and you can make a devotee from the book. And someone else might say, the book's not enough, you need to follow up as well. So I wonder how that sits.
The book's not enough. The books, you say the book's enough.
So there may be one argument that if you give someone Srila Prabhupada's book on the street, then that's enough and that can make them a devotee. Books make devotees. And there's another argument that says the book's on its own isn't sufficient. We need some follow-up, a program for them to go to.
No, I mean, they'll get something from it. And they may not understand everything, but they'll understand something. And it'll start to change their thinking process. And just by actually, Prabhupada says, even if they touch the book, they get purified. So it's a deity, it's in the house, and it's purifying. But in order to understand devotional service ongoing, we need practical help. So, Tadvidi Pranipatana, we have to approach a spiritual authority.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see how enthusiastic you are as well. That's a pleasure to see. Thank you. I have a question, or rather I would like to find understanding about. In your point you said today the devotee can by himself protect himself, like, you said that if apsaras come along, And in another verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, this my material energy only, me, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead can, conquer it, so come to me and, obviously I will clear the path for you. So in one sense you point that the devotee by himself can do it, yeah? But here is very clearly in Bhagavad Gita says that only Krishna can, clear the path. So could you maybe elaborate on
I didn't understand that part about we can do it ourselves. I didn't understand your logic.
You said that the devotee himself so powerful, because obviously, in one sense, anyway, so could you kindly clarify that?
Yeah, if we're actually a Mahajan, then we can do that. If we're not Mahajans, then we need to take shelter. Because a Mahajan's always taking full shelter, he's always protected. But we may not be doing that, therefore we're at risk. So we need to be reminded by this verse that we should do what the Mahajan does and take complete shelter. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, he was sent to Sutala Loka, which is, there's not many devotees in Sutala Loka. It's a lower planetary system. But he sent Prahlad Maharaj to give association to Bali Maharaj. And when I heard that, I thought, well, who's going to actually give association to Prahlad Maharaj? And, so I asked this question, and the devotee who thought for a while, he says, he's got his own association. And I didn't accept that at first, but then since I've been reading and, I found that that's actually the situation, that a pure devotee, he actually purifies places of pilgrimage by his association with it, because he's taking shelter all the time. So that was Prahlad Maharaj's situation as a practical example. Okay. Okay, Grantaraj. Go on, carry on.
Hare Krishna. So if I understood you correctly, you said that...
You have to speak up. I'm waiting for a hearing aid.
okay. No, it's okay actually.
What's that?
Looks like the super soul has spontaneously satisfied him.
Okay, no question now. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
He's one.